Hi to everybody, and thank you for the feedback you send me by private messages. I remind you that these videos are addressed to non-composers or to young composers and to, let's say, not artists, in order to give some answers to questions that have been asked me several years ago, and I have never had the time, or I never took the time to answer. And this is the reason why yesterday I didn't post the video on the relation master-pupil, because it is quite long. It takes 1 hour, so I started with the Italian, and now I have to do it in French and then in English. The advantage of doing these videos in 3 different languages is that I can address myself to several layers of understanding. So those who can listen in 3, I don't think that people will listen in 3 languages. I've seen that some of yours did this the very first day. So in any case, what I would like to say is that today I will do a very quick I have to point my speech on a concept that is the concept of transcendency, and because it is the base of the video I did yesterday in Italian, I need a little time to do it in French and then in English. So today, please allow me to be quite, let's say, not exhaustive when I speak about transcendency, and I beg your pardon of this. And every time I will not put any polemics inside this video, because we don't need polemics in this moment of our lives. But at the end of my video, when I will address to young composers and young artists, I would be a little severe. I mean, I would like to make a wish not to reproduce some, I think, categorical mistakes that I can see in many composers of my age, sometimes older, and I would like that the youngest one could avoid these categorical mistakes, because the categorical mistakes cannot be solved. You cannot solve, not you, not Wittgenstein, not Husserl. If this kind of philosopher couldn't solve this problem, please trust me that it is probably for the human being impossible to solve categorical mistakes. So in order not to solve this problem, it's better to avoid the problem. The answer that I would like to give you today consists on why do I use technology in my music, as I use so-called historical instruments like oboe, like violin, like piano. They are old instruments. Because I don't use electric guitar, I don't use synthesizers, I don't use, I don't know, electric drums. There are a lot of instruments that are really from nowadays that I don't use. I use very old instruments dating the period of Mozart, of Beethoven. And so why I use these instruments, quite old, and the new technology. And I would like to start with some. The first concept is that in music, there have never been any conflict between a new technology and the previous tools. Sometimes we forget that the fire it was a technology. When human beings starting controlling how to produce fire and how to control the fire, automatically we could develop several tools using previous material. But I don't want to make a history about the notion of technology and tools, because it's not my field of knowledge. But I would like to give you 3 examples about how the technology has been immediately integrated in music since very long time ago. The first one is when the paper, the sheet of paper, came in Europe. And we could write, instead of writing on the skin of animals, we call the parchemin, I don't know in English this word, sorry, the pergamene, okay, was based on skin of animals, treated, and then we wrote big notes, because it was not easy to write little one. okay? And when the paper arrived, and so we could print on paper or write directly on paper, we could develop the so-called page of music, sheet of music, so a sheet of paper of music. And so in a very little page or number of pages, we could put many notes. And so, because we could write in a more little and detailed way, and so the instrumental music had a big acceleration, okay? It means a technology completely not musical was at the origin of a new kind of music, the so-called instrumental music. In a way, accelerated a lot the instrumental music. The second example is about the keyboard instrument, like the cembalo or harpsichord, we say, sorry, in English, harpsichord, or the fortepiano and the pianoforte. The harpsichord, as you know, probably it's completely made in wood, okay, and there are some strings, and these strings are pizzicati. Sorry, I plugged, probably say, and you cannot do stronger or less. By the technology of the time, you can just trigger the string, and so you cannot change the intensity, the volume, the strength that produce a louder or softer sound. That's why softer sounds. That's why we invented the fortepiano, that on the same wood instruments, instead of plugging them, we percute them like a percussion. And in that way, we can make a percussion in a louder or less louder. So the forte, piano, the Italian words of the time, and then translated it into pianoforte, that is the same thing, that we could change the dynamics of the instrument. So the intensity with which we are producing a note, a percussive note. And then, thanks to this, when we could create some metals not too heavy, so we can create some leaks, we could create the base of the piano is still in wood, but with a metal that is not too heavy, so the wooden part would not crash because of the weight. We could make a metal part inside the piano, so we could put the strings on this metal part, and we could make more tensions of the strings, so that if it was in wood, the piano would have, and it happens many times. That's why the research is very pragmatical sometimes. So the instrument was broken all the time. Then we thought how to make the strings stronger, with more tension, okay, and without crashing the piano. So we put some metal inside the piano, and nowadays we use the carbon league of metals that allows to have very powerful piano in the concert hall, like the Carnegie Hall, for instance, and a piano can play so strong enough to fill up the acoustic of the concert hall. This is an example how the technology of making several kind of new kind of metal could change and pass from the wood to metal, keeping the part of wood for the resonance, but giving to the piano the possibility to be stronger from a point of view of the power, of the volume, of the acousticity, of the sound. And the third example is, of course, if we think of the music I produce and the music I belong to, is a very little field of the music, okay, a niche of the music. But if we think to music in general, and in the US you better know than me, when the electricity arrived, immediately music started to amplify. Immediately we took the electricity to make the amplification, and the instruments have been first amplified, then electrified, so the so well-known electric guitar arrived, and then the electricity was introduced with some microchips, and the electronics become almost independent, giving birth to what we call the calculators, or now the computers, and now we have the so-called informatic music. And if we think to the global, in a wide way about music, nowadays there are a lot of thousands, probably millions of music produced through the informatics. So, and the informatics is a new technology, was a new technology in a while, and then it becomes completely a part. There is no mixing music nowadays. We cannot mix in the music without the technology. So any kind of recording use the technology of the recording, that is amplification, treatment, and transformation into waves. So into into the converter into analogical to digital system, and then the converter from digital to analogical system. It's another example of any kind of music you are listening to through the computer, through the smartphone, through any kind of so-called digital support, uses the technology of the informatics, or the digital one. So, in music, it's important to know that in the US, justement, in the US in 1957, Max Matthews invented the first software using a computer, IBM, in order to create new sound. So not sounds coming from wood, from stones, from skins, from metals. No. Music coming from a computer, creating completely from zero, we could say, sounds. It was music one. In Europe, 1 year later, it means in 1958, in Paris, there was the GRM, the Group of Musical Research, in English we say, at the radio in Paris with Schaeffer. And they use a completely different technology. It was a tape, a magnetic tape, that on which you could record several sounds. Then you can cut and paste, if you want, in another order. So you can mixing or changing the order of the sounds, and you create a new kind of music, the so-called musique concrète, that very quickly became the so-called, nowadays when the tape became the hard drive, the so-called computer music in terms of mixing the sounds. It comes from Radio France in Paris. And in 1977, an institution, music institution, this one really close to the so-called contemporary music, closed to the contemporary, because it is still closed nowadays. It is the IRCAM, a very big institution, completely dedicated to the relationship between technology and music. As I was born in 1971, so far away from 58, or close to 77, but when I was born, okay, it took a little time for me, and I think for you too, to be able to think about what you are and in which kind of aesthetics you want to belong to. And when I started to be clear in my mind, okay, IRCAM was already there. I mean, IRCAM came out, was constructed, built in 1977 when I was 6 years old. It took me 12 more years, so when I was 18 years old, I started studying computer music, because it was already there. Okay, it was, the technology was already there, and in my case, I always think that a society, let's imagine that this pencil is a society, gives a certain number of opportunity, or let's say point out a certain number of needs and of possibilities, and immediately here there is several fields of knowledge, philosophy, mathematics, biochemics, many things that tries or are able to have a reverberation between what the society gives and what we are able to answer to, or we would like to give some answers. And among these disciplines there is also music, of course, arts. And arts refers not to pragmatic questioning from the society, but the so-called transcendency. Okay, transcendency is just for now, let's limit it. That's why I did this. The first part of my speech was in order to excuse the fact that I will reduce for this moment the notion of transcendency to the internal push we have, the internal need we have, the internal volunteer we have to get access to the knowledge, okay? And to getting access to the knowledge, we refer to the past, to the things that are possible. And when you get access, or you try to get access of new form of knowledge, automatically many questions arise. Among these questions, some possible transcendency answers come from arts, okay? From philosophy, from sciences, of course, but also from art. And I belong to those who tries, sometimes probably we succeed, in giving some answers, some prototypes that probably are fragile, that are destined or addressed to few people, but we are able to give some answers belonging to some specific period of our societies. And for me it was clear since when I was young that I wanted to be in the present, because the societies evolves quite quickly and the aesthetics should be, each period of history should have, and it is the case, has his own aesthetics. There are many aesthetics at the same time. And for me, an aesthetics that is shifted in time, it's empty, okay? And it becomes a so-called academic. And so in my case, the first part of my answer, why I do use technology, even if I use ancient instruments, is because the society in which I was born had already this technology, and I wanted to be in the society, in the present. So I studied the technology to be in this reverberation with the society. This is the first part of the answer. Now some very concrete answer. Thanks to this technology, I can use the amplification. Using the amplification allows me to make listen several kind of sounds that without amplification it is impossible. Now I take the example of a violinist, a plausible violinist who is here, and when a violinist plays his violin, the violin is here. When he plays, very often if they play Tchaikovsky music, in some passages before using the bone to make the vibration of the strings, first they trigger a note locally with the finger, okay, in order to listen that they are in the right position, not to make a mistake, okay. This is a very well known for each instrument, say a violin, an alto player, and so the so-called string players use these techniques. That is for them to be sure about the pitch, but not for the audience. The audience has not to listen this ting ting ting, the little sound, to make them sure that they are ready to play the right notes, okay? When when you play with the mouth, similar kind of instruments, when you play with the so-called wind instruments with the key of the instruments, when you sing many things that are just for the musicians, okay, they are private in a way, can be pushed public for the audience, publicly, thanks to an amplification. Michael Jackson is one of this example of who all the little sounds, the little cry he made in his song were mixed before, okay, or during the mixing, and then he put them together with his normal way of singing, and he was one of the artists, yeah, there are many, who, thanks to the amplification, they can make listen things that was in a little sphere for the musicians, okay? So for me, the amplification is an extension, an expansion, not really of a predefined archetypes, because in this case, many things I will say they do not redefine an archetypes, and they don't even create new archetypes. So the amplification allows me to amplify, to make larger some fields of expressivity. And we have seen that in music, this kind of things were always accepted and integrated in music. First is the amplification that allows me also to do something more. I mean, as I record a sound in real time, it means faster than sounds. In the main time that the violinist is playing, I can record his sound, put on another loudspeakers behind the audience, for instance, and make a treatment of the sound, change something in the sound, and faster than the sound is arriving to your ears, the direct sound of the violinist, the sounds coming from in the loudspeakers at the same speed, okay, the so-called real time, allows me to make many changes, and you listen to a treated violinist, okay? And so the amplification, and through the amplification I can use the treatment of sounds, and I use softwares in order to treat sounds, because these make an extension, an expansion about the timbre of instruments, and so it make an expansion about the possibility of expressivity of my music. A second reason why I use the technology in my music, even if I use old instruments like a violin, is because I believe in writing. And this is why I told you before, sorry if today I do not speak completely about transcendency. But in any case, today I just say to you that there is no transcendency without writing. It's impossible. Not only for me, let's say at least for me. Okay, but if I am honest with you, no, nobody can make transcendency without writing, any kind of writing, but writing, because writing created the distance between a moment when you fix a concept or you fix a phenomena and the possibility of reading this phenomena several times and make it the so-called recursion. It's today you have to accept that I give you some topics, some concepts without explaining them. I'm sorry, it will arrive with a video about Meister and pupils. Transcendency without writing doesn't exist, and I'm close to transcendency, otherwise I would not do this kind of music. Why I do this kind of music? Because I'm really close to the transcendency, because it's a way of giving answer to the society puts some questions, and I think to belong to those who can, in a very little way, give an answer to sometimes a very little part of a question. But I can do it, and I like to do it. So, in writings and written music, the one I belong to refers to the so-called calculable structures. It means the structures that can be calculated. It means that some of you probably listen to Bach music, and there is this very silly comparison that because you know, probably because you have read on Wikipedia that Bach was attached to some symbols of numbers, you say, we can listen in music of Bach the relation between numbers and music. There is nothing more wrong than this about Bach music, because Bach music is based on a very specific aesthetics and system. Or the aesthetics, the Baroque one, the German Baroque music, the aesthetics, and the system was the modal and tonal music, and the field, the ensemble or the sphere of techniques is called contrapoint. Contrapoint is an ensemble of techniques grouping some hundreds of rules, and each rules is the formalization of functionalities or functions, and each function is a mathematical structure, a mathematical operativity. So when you listen a fugue of Bach, Bach is using rules that uses function, that uses mathematics, but you cannot hear them, because it has been proven, but you can read any kind of cognitive science paper or let's say book, that we cannot mathematical structure, okay? So, but what it is sure that Bach used a quite well formalized, I could see very well formalized system. And that was called the tonal system, or in any case, the tonal system or modal system through the contrapoint, that is extremely well formalized. And it is the same system that has been used by Mozart, by Beethoven, by Liszt, with some extension in other fields. And that's why you don't say, I don't feel the music in Beethoven. Of course, as we cannot feel in Bach music. To the contrary, the music I want to write refers to the same calculable structures, so the same kind of rules. And I have created many part of softwares, what the so-called in a musical term, libraries of function. It means an ensemble of function that you can load in a software, so in a technology, and it allows me to create some complex calculation that I'm not able to do by mind. It means that I use the writing, that is a very old technique, okay? I write for very old instruments like a violin, and I use the computer to create some parts of the scores that needs some calculation that I'm not able, as you're not able to do, or anybody is not able to do. When you require to access to some calculation, they need the recursion or some very complex calculation, for instance, about the morphing. The morphing, probably you know, in the field of videos. Nowadays, anytime you see a video based on so-called special effects with digitalized special effects, when you have a shape that becomes another shapes in a plausible way, it means you are doing a metamorphosis, okay, or called morphing in English. And I developed many functionalities, several software allowing people to take a musical theme, for instance, from Bach, and make a continuous transformation from Bach to Chopin, for instance, in a plausible way. So this is an example that I cannot do by hand. I'm not able. I cannot even. I can think that it is possible, but if I try to do by hand, it's not plausible. So I called a new technology. At the time, we were in the 96, 97, sorry, 94. I called the technology called Patchwork, a software, and I use a language. It was not done by me, of course, by other people. Then I use a language not done by me, the Lisp, but other people, but it was a technology of the time, and I create some functionalities that now in other software, because the software evolves permanently, this function is still there. So I use the technology also to create scores. Then the last part of why I use the technology is because thanks to this technology, I'm referring of course to the digital technology, it means the computer, music, or the use of the computer in music, I can make communications with other arts. I mean, thanks to this technology, or the use of the new technology that since the 90s was at my level of access in terms of money, in terms of how to learn it, okay, I started making artistic experience with other artists and sign together a same artistic object with Miguel Chevalier, who is a multimedia artist in creating how can I say, artistic objects, if we could say like this, based on real-time video images generated by the computer. I can make a music that is in a constant relation of real-time with his music. So when as his images change belonging to the behavior of the audience or some behavior of people, my music reacts in the same with the same properties of interactivity. Of course, I cannot do with an orchestra. I cannot do with the pianist. Okay, I can do with the computer. So I use the technology to make an extension of the kind of expressivity of my music. I do not only write music for concerts. I write music for installations, for interactive installation with other artists, several. I will dedicate a chapter with one of them because I want to make a sort of tribute to these artists I like very much. And without the technology, of course, even if sometimes I write for orchestra, so I use the technology in order to write the score for orchestra. In other fields, I use the technology to write the music that exists not with the orchestra, and it exists inside a museum, inside the gallery, in the open space, with some other artists make images or robots and so on. And the last part of my answer refers again, to this notion about archetypes. And there are two new archetypes, so you can see that we can create new archetypes. The first one comes from Umberto Eco. He was an Italian writer, but also epistemologist, a semiologist. So he formalized the so-called open opera. Open opera is not the singing opera, it means an open artistic project. Before this period, we were in, he was, because I was not there, but the period dates the 67, 68, 1967, 1968. Before this period, generally a composer wrote a score, sent the score to the musician, when the score is finished, closed, or we could say, okay? and you send to the musician. They start making the interpretation. Each interpretation can change, of course, and when the interpretation change, you can make several interpretations of the same score, but the score is closed, is finished. If you make a movie, you make with the actor and the actress the different sequences. Then you get in the studio, they make the montage, then the mixage, and so on. And then when you print out the last version, you put in the cinemas, and the movie is closed. Okay. Umberto Eco, with other people, but Umberto Eco was one of those who formalized it. Define the open opera, something that is not closed in the meaning I just give to you. What does it mean? It means that he wanted to share with the audience the moment of the creation. And so they used several strategies in order to make this kind of music based on something that is not closed, not achieved, not completed. And in my opinion, without the technology, the digital technology of the computer, it was, they produced a several number of prototypes, quite hard to be kept by the audience simply. You needed to study to get inside this kind of performances, because let's say the technology used was not ready. Okay, when this technology called faster than sound, it means the technology that make a treatment of the sound faster than the speed of the sound arrives to your ears, the so-called real time, in other words. Okay, I think it is faster than sounds is much more correct terms than real time. Who cares? And when this technology was there, I felt a need, a personal one. People doesn't need necessarily to use the open works or the open operas. Okay, so I took the criteria coming from the 60s, knowing that I was born in 71, and when I had the knowledge of myself, it was really something extremely well known, extremely, in a way, old fashion. But I tried, and I think I could renew it. So in a way, this is an answer why I do this kind of music, because I'm attached to how to increase the size of an archetypes to make it bigger in a way, or how to create new archetypes. And so, taking the idea of the open opera now with the new technology that are full of artists. I'm not at all the only one. There are plenty of artists using this technology and doing the open opera, even if they don't know, because ignorance is everywhere, of course. And it's important to you to know that I use the technology, and I can say to you why, because I'm attached to this theory of Umberto Eco, and I renew it in my own experiences out of the orchestras, out of the concert hall. Okay. There was a very well-known composer, Karl-Heinz Stockhausen. I met him several times, and I have the experience, and I have the chance to make an interview that you can listen on YouTube. It is in French, I'm sorry. And you can listen several interviews with Luciano Berio, the composer, Pierre Boulez, the French composer, Stockhausen, German composer, and Jonathan Harvey, composer too, with whom I make a dialogue about some topics I was very close to. Of course, these interviews are really for the microcosmos of the contemporary, so-called contemporary music. So probably they are for non-artists and not composers. It's extremely hard to understand what we are speaking of and about. But Stockhausen formalized the so-called moment form. Moment form was a vision of how to compose music by moments, and these moments are closed, okay? And there is a sort of independency of meaning between one moment and the other, okay? And I have too deep respect to make any negative critics to Stockhausen. So I would just say that the technology that was available when I was 25 years old, okay, so we were in 94 or 1994, could better apply the idea of the moment form. I mean that I took another archetypes, the one invented by Stockhausen on the moment form, and I applied, and I still apply in my interactive and generative opera, let's say, artistic works. That's why I would like to speak about Argo very quickly, because there are a lot of video on the net speaking about this project. First of all, I want to thank the genius David Kuller from Boston, who studied at MIT. He's a friend, he's almost a brother. We love each other. And David Kuller developed this tool in order to detect the properties and the behavior of breathing. This is a sort of bell. I don't show you because it's not so elegant, but I have this bell permanently around my rib cage, and this belt, I don't know the English one, this thing, detects permanently how I breathe. If I breathe in, if I breathe out, the apnea, the hypopnea, the quantity of oxygen I'm putting inside me during the minutes, the hours, and so on. And it is something that allows me to create permanently. So nowadays, the 5th of April is the 3rd birthday of Argo. Because it was born 3 years ago, and 2 years ago, exactly day by day, it has been shown, exposed in Grand Palais in Paris during an exhibition called Artists and Robots, and I'm quite proud about it, of course. And thanks to David, this is something that we sign a sort of moral contract, lifetime moral contract that I'm bringing it, I'm wearing it since 3 years ago, every day, 24 hours and 7 days on 7. The same question that comes all the time is, of course, for the private, sentimental moments with my wife, and when I take my shower, I remove it. So it's almost 24 hours on 24 hours, and hopefully and likely I have some private moments still available. But otherwise, in any moment, even in this very moment, Argo is breathing on the web, or breathing in some artist galleries, or breathing in some museum. What does it mean? That you can see a sort of spheroid breathing exactly as I'm breathing. So when I inhale, when I exhale, and so on. And I create a software to make it visible. You can see the position of my body, how I'm moving, but you can listen what I'm, let's say, a semantic translation of what I'm feeling, because the society evolves quite quickly. Now we have sensors. My son has a sensor to detect the quantity of sugar because he's diabetic, and so he uses his smartphones to check the glycemia in his blood. So we have sensors connected in order to see how our body is behaving. So knowing that David is really fighting against this virus that is at the origin of these videos, thanks to this tool, because we can see how a person is breathing, and if we have to give oxygen or not, if we have to I don't know how to say intubation, I don't know if it exists this word or not, sorry, in English, but knowing that this tool is not an artistic tool. This tool is pragmatically useful, mainly in this very extremely difficult moment of our human being. And I made a tribute to the contrary with my so it means the society produced something. David, it is in this society, produced something. Nowadays, this society, our society, is really in a problem, in a stress problem. So we are looking for tools to detect how we are breathing because of this virus. So this software exists, these tools exist, and 3 years ago, likely we did not have this problem, but 3 years ago David was still working and already working on this project, and I decided to make not something based on something said like it is this moment, but I create a sort of tribute to the living, and the living is the breathing, okay? And in this moment of the society, I know there are some artists using the so-called physiological sensors in order to take the eyes, pupils, eyes dilatation, and I think it is not that successful because eyes change the behavior belonging to the quantity of lights we are getting in. And those who are using the heart beating too has a little problem in my opinion, because if you drink 3 or 4 coffee, after a few minutes your heart beating increases even if you are relaxed. So I think that breath in this moment is a very good answer to take the state of mind of a person, because you can detect if it is stressed, if I am stressed, if I am relaxed, if I have some mental logical activity. You can see the shape when I think it's quite homogeneous. You can see when I'm looking for something. When you are looking for something, you, like me, if you make the detection, the quality of breath change quite randomly, and so on and so on and so on. So this is an answer about the society gives a tool, and I put this tool in order to give an answer to all archetypes. The one based on the open opera, from open words from Umberto Eco in the 60s, one coming from Stockhausen also in the 60s, the moment form, and now I'm answering in 2017, 18 and 19, and nowadays it's still there. So it's a way to show you why I use the technology. This is a technology, okay, and I use to make a musical answer, a musical proposal to something that belongs to some questioning coming from other artists before me. Now I would like to finish, as I do always, with the wish for young artists. And this is extremely true, not in the US, but in Europe, and for those who come to Europe studying with us. There is a sort of, refuse. The many so-called composers, they use old instruments and they use software, but they don't use the so-called commercial software. You should explain me what is a commercial software. So my wish is, I would like to see more and more composers, women and men, using software as they are, software. In my opinion, the so-called commercial software does not exist, because you use commercialized interfaces, you use commercialized computers, you use commercialized networks, you use commercialized software. So please be honest and use any kind of software, and try to be as those who use this software to make commercialized music. Sometimes they really use better than us, better what we do. The second thing I would like to really to suggest you, and this belongs to a video I will do about the relation with the sponsors. How is it possible that Jacopo can talk with the sponsors like Camille Fournier, like Chanel, with big institutions? Or how is it possible some artists can talk with, like we did with Miguel Chevalier, with Hermès, with Samsung? It is because we are in the present, really in the present, and there's no sort of shift between our aesthetics and the society. To the contrary, nowadays I see again some people using some techniques, so-called extended techniques for ancient instruments that demands a lot of study, a lot of precision, a lot of accuracy, and they do not amplify them. And so you make something that is not hearable by people on 10 minutes. So I would like to stop, to make a sort of division between what is technology noble and what it is technology not noble. If you use this kind of software like Facebook, now I'm using now, if you use any kind of social network to distribute your music, please stop saying that there are some software there, because they are used in the commercial music that we cannot touch, we should not touch. I hope to see more and more new artists being really on time, okay, on the time of the society, so really being here and stopping being here, okay, completely shift in time, and sometimes using the technology that is nowadays available, okay, but they are still doing music belonging to the 60s. This is my wish for you young artists.